I bet you know that sometimes we feel in ways that we just do not want to feel. In Psalm 31, King David, who wrote Psalm 31, within a span of just 4 verses in the Bible, he lists a handful of different emotions that he was apparently feeling all at the same time. And it's quite a list. He says he was distressed, he was weak with sorrow, his soul and his body were filled with grief. His life was consumed by anguish, by groaning. His strength was failing him because of certain afflictions. Deep in his bones, he felt weakness. And while he was feeling all those things, he also lets us know that he was entirely alone as he was feeling them. There was no one to help him. Any one of those things can be difficult enough all by itself, but to feel all of them at the same time, that can be a heavy burden. And you might know that from experience. And so if it ever has been or currently is, or you're afraid that one day it might be a burden that you're trying to carry, remember 2 things about our emotions. Number 1, God knows. He knows. It's one thing he wanted Moses to know when he asked Moses to leave the fields with the sheep and go back to Egypt and set his people free. God told Moses why he was going to do that. He said, I have heard the cries of my people. His people in Egypt were crying out with many of the same feelings, hurting and distressed and troubled and weak. And God heard. He hears you too. And secondly, remember that God knows how you feel. We find that little nugget in the Gospel of Matthew as Matthew records for us what Jesus was feeling the night he was betrayed, the night before he went to the cross. Jesus told his disciples that he was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, and he felt troubled and anxious. So many of the things that when we feel them make us feel already defeated, like it's no use moving on. But Jesus, as distressing as that was, as difficult as it must have been, if the Son of God was struggling, he went on. He went on to the cross the next day. And he gave you the right to look forward to a day when you will be feeling something entirely different. The absence of all of those things. It's been pointed out by many others. I'm not the first one to point it out, but when the Bible talks about heaven, it doesn't really describe what heaven looks like. I mean, the Bible uses a lot of picture language to help us imagine more a feeling of what it will be like when we go into heaven. But really, when we get into eternity, when we're with Jesus in the new heavens and the new earth, the way the Bible describes it, they describe it more less by what you will see and more by how you will feel, or rather by how you won't feel. When there's no more death or crying or pain. Everything will be as if it were brand new again. And then that's how it will be. For days on end. And until then, when you're hurting, when your heart is heavy, when you're overly burdened, as we all are, just remember that God knows. And God knows how you feel. He knows how difficult it is. That's why Jesus came. He came to save you from it. He has, and he will. Rest well tonight, my friend.